What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Trigun Stampede. This is episode 4, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
So now we get our first introduction. Well, actually, I guess you could say it's the rebooted introduction of Nicholas Wolfwood in
Yeah.
this new continuity of sorts. So the episode picks up. They said 3 days after the events, after Vash confronted Knives. So now they're all heading to the place called July City to pursue him. However, like Vash is, of course, is being blamed for what happened. What was it? To Genora Town or whatever that Genora Rock or whatever that place is. And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Meryl and Roberto are also wanted as well because they're accompanying Vash to July City. So on their way there, they end up literally running over, not running over, just hitting Nick with the truck they were driving in, just pretty much whiplashing the end of the truck onto him. So they end up picking him up, and then they try to take him over to this medical clinic out in the middle of nowhere in no man's land, until they find that I guess both their doctors that work there are pretty much dead, and all they could find is just this one little kid hiding out in the locker.
Yeah. And of course, their first impression is that somebody had killed these two, and that the kid was hiding from the killer in the locker. And they try to help the kid, but the kid doesn't really talk. Shortly after that, Wolfwood is, of course, surprisingly okay, actually, because he's kind of recovers from being hit with a vehicle. So yeah, he's mostly fine, and then they leave the place, and all of a sudden there's it seems like there's an earthquake or something, and we find out that it's not an earthquake, of course, but it's the mouth of a giant sandworm that ends up swallowing all of them.
Yeah, and pretty much. Well, somehow they all also survive that, and then they well, introductions out of the way. They mostly spend the entire time trying to find a way out of this worm, but at the same time, one by one, I guess. Well, mostly just Meryl and Roberto somehow get abducted under mysterious circumstances inside that worm, probably because maybe something was alive down there. Is I don't know, taking them somewhere. I don't know where they are after they get abducted, but we just mostly focused on Vash and Nick throughout the remainder of this episode. And while they're looking for Meryl and Roberto, they somehow get to the base of the nose of the worm, and it ends up sneezing them out. And so they manage to get out. But then all of a sudden, Vash decides, to get swallowed up by the worm again, because he knows that Meryl and Roberto are still inside the thing. So they end up getting in there. So after they Vash and Nick get swallowed up by the worm again, they end up running into the kid they met in the clinic again. But then Vash, of course, finds something amiss and realizes that the boy is responsible for everything that's happened, and he also finds out that he's been controlling the worm the entire time.
Yeah, I'm honestly not too surprised about that. Basically, the kid had betrayed them and made it look like that there was somebody that killed those two people. But of course, it was him. Or I don't know if is it a girl or a boy? I'm actually not sure about that.
I can't tell. I couldn't even tell, really.
Well, whatever. The kid supposedly had done it, and basically used that to, kind of trick them, and get them, get the worm to swallow them.
Yeah, and of course, they managed to. Well, actually, no. It was mostly Nick that did all the work in taking down this worm all by himself. He just basically takes out his his giant cross gun thing, and then he just basically just lasers the freaking worm in half.
Yeah. Of course, that's how they end up getting out of the worm. He just completely splits the worm in two.
I mean, he couldn't have done that in the first place. It's just
Yeah.
for him to easily just do that to that worm, just like, I mean, like
I feel like that should have made Vash and the rest of them a little bit suspicious. Like, considering he could have done that the whole time, but he didn't do that until now.
yeah, and of course, earlier on in the episode, Roberto initially questions Nick about him personally, and his claiming to be like I don't know, like Nick calls himself an undertaker rather than a priest, and Roberto, of course, like I guess you could say he's like the wise man of the group, like he's
He kind of comes off that way.
yeah, he's almost like the voice of reason, like it's like considering that he's like replacing Millie, from the original series, he kind of does grow on me a little bit.
Yeah, and they're kind of like two completely different characters, because Millie was more of felt most of the time like she was more of a comic relief character, and Roberto is not really like that.
Yeah, I mean he kind of comes off like initially came off as like a bit of a drunk at first, but then he's but most of the time he's just sober for the last several episodes we've seen him, and he kind of comes off as pretty reasonable when he stirs up a conversation with not only Vash but several other people he comes across.
Yeah. So shortly after this, the Wolfwood or Vash and the others are like cooking this the meat from the worm with these I guess you'd say these like tribesmen or something. These guys were kind of like watching the whole time while the worm was had swallowed Vash and his group, but they're just like cooking the worm, and of course Meryl is kind of grossed out about it because she doesn't, it's made from a worm and she doesn't really want to eat it. And I don't know if it was Roberto or Wolfwood like trying to like get her to eat the meat, like tease her about it, but yeah, like they basically they're just camping out and eating the meat, and it's I forget exactly what I think it's mostly what happens during the scene. Like Wolfwood goes off to because I think there's I don't know if this is after credits or before that, but Wolfwood was talking to the kid, and we find out that they had both kind of like they're working together, which is kind of surprising considering Wolfwood's character from the original anime. I don't really know what he's up to or why he's working with this kid, but they were working together. This was all kind of like, I guess you'd say, sort of an act to try to get Wolfwood to gain their trust. So I'm kind of wondering what Wolfwood is going to be doing in this anime, or if I guess at some point he's going to betray them or something. I don't know.
I mean,
it's a little bit.
I mean, yeah. Vash still has that gigantic $6 million or $60 million bounty on his head.
Yeah, so. It could be that Wolfwood is just trying to claim the bounty. Yeah, that could be what he's after, or maybe he's actually working with Knives. I'm not really sure. But we do. I think we also do get an after credit scene, don't we, with Knives and his group.
Yeah. So I think the guy they called the Doctor at the last episode mentions that Vash has this special ability that can unlock something. Unfortunately, it's because of Vash's like pacifist mentality is preventing him from unlocking that ability. So now Knives is determined to confront Vash again and try to force him to unlock it one way or the other.
Yeah. So I guess it's some abilities that may be similar to what Knives can do, because he can do all this crazy stuff that Vash isn't really capable of. And he mentioned something in the last episode about how Vash hasn't yet unlocked his gate. So I guess which I guess is some kind of magic thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe that's something that's probably going to happen later with Vash. But Yeah, I thought this was it was a decent episode. I'm interested in where they're taking Wolfwood's character, because obviously it's pretty different from how he was in the original anime, and it's also interesting how he's like working with this kid, and I mean, he's up to something. I guess maybe most likely, I guess maybe trying to get the money that uh, that is that is on Vash. Like he's just trying to turn him in or something. Maybe something else. But yeah, I'm not too sure.
I mean,
Um,
if we remember, the original Wolfwood wanted to have the money to open an orphanage. I mean,
yeah,
that could play a part of why he wants to work with Vash, or maybe get the bounty on his head. But I'm not sure, like whether or not, like, if this kid, like, I think he called him Zazzy the Beast Tamer.
yeah,
So I don't even know what Zazzy's role is going to play, and whether or not, like, if this kid is really working with knives, or if he's just in it for himself.
yeah. But yeah, I thought it was a fairly decent episode. I don't really have too much else to say about it. It was definitely different. It's from the original series, obviously. And the circumstances with how they met Wolfwood are completely different. So I mean, I guess that's what we can pretty much expect from now on, is that it's going to be going in a completely different direction. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
I mean, with Wolfwood being in this episode, I'm still curious on whether or not that they're ever going to bring back Millie. I mean, she is technically a character that was included in the manga and the original anime. I mean, unless they can find some way to bring her in, like, that'd be great. But I mean, based on promotional material, like, I don't see her even showing up, because, like,
Unless they're like saving it as some kind of surprise that she's going to show up or something. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, it is just a weird choice to me that she's not in the new series. Like, I mean, there's so many things you could have done with her, so I'm kind of, it's just surprising that they just completely removed her character.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really mind the new character. I guess they replaced her with Roberto. He like you said, he's kind of growing on me too. I do kind of like his character. He's obviously a different character than Millie. But I still think he's an interesting character from what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that all being said, guys, until next week, we will see you all next time.